This is Damian Macy on Tuesday, November the 3rd of 2015, and with the Marshall Public Library Oral History Project. And today we have at the library Gary Strohm. Gary is a long-term resident of this area, grew up not very far from here, and is in business. And I think he probably has a story to tell us. So, Gary?
Well, sure. Well, it's a neat opportunity to be able to just talk about life. I was born in 1960, and I was born 2 months premature at I don't know what hospital would that have been in Terre Haute. It was in Terre Haute.
Might have been the old St. Anthony.
St. Anthony. I'm sure that was it, which is evolved into Union Hospital today. But I was born 2 months premature, and still was 4 pounds 15 ounces at that. But and then right after the weather, I was born February 8th, and the weather was pretty mild until they brought me home. And as soon as they brought me home, it was just a terrible snowstorm, I guess, or amount of snow. I guess it was like they had to use like a bulldozer to get my parents. Of course, had been married just like a year, so they were still like newlyweds. So, but they managed to get me home, and then.
You remember that snowstorm then?
No, I don't. but they do, because they had to use like I think a bulldozer to get. They were just about a mile east of West Union in a house that doesn't exist anymore. But they had to, and I'm pretty sure my mom remembers this really well. The fact that I don't think they had an outhouse, and they could just imagine with that kind of weather. But anyway, so the doctor told them to, or they thought, the doctor said to feed me every 3 hours. So they basically pumped me full of formula. They would wake me up every 3 hours, and the doctor didn't intend. I don't think the doctor intended them to wake me up. It was just like, as when he's awake, feed him every 3 hours. So I gained weight and grew really well. But
and your parents' names?
Lester and Mary Lou. And my dad had grown up on a farm east of West Union. And then my mom grew up, her maiden name was Gunder. Joe and Ruth were her parents, lived on Pine Street, Pine and 12th in Marshall. And but they had gotten married. I think she was just, it was like the week after, right after she graduated from high school, which happened a lot more back then. And he was 2 years older, but he had been in the military reserves for 6 months.
Okay.
He wasn't active duty, but he had done that, and he was going to be a farmer, and so they ended up moving down to that old farmhouse by West Union. But I grew up in the country. The only animals we had were pigs, so we got to help raise them.
Did you have a pet?
Yes, I had two that I remember real well. One was Laddie, and instead of Lassie, but Laddie. I guess the male version, and a big collie. And when I was like either kindergarten or first grade, I don't know which, we had a lane. Our house was like down a lane, a couple 100-yard lane, and the bus pulled up that morning, and Laddie, like a lot of farm dogs, likes to chase the wheels, chase after cars, and the wheel went right over him.
Okay.
So it was really sad. But so that was it for that one. And years later, we had a little dog that looked like a cross between a dachshund and a German Shepherd. And real short legs, all black and brown, but real short legs. And my favorite TV program when I was growing up was I Love Lucy. So her name was Lucy.
Did you ever have one of the pigs that was a pet, or that you thought, I'd like to have that one to keep?
Not really. No, I mean, I really, it was kind of fun. The little pigs were a lot of fun, and we had a barn where we actually had like farrowing, like a farrowing house for them to deliver their babies. We didn't do real well with that. I don't remember them doing real well, but no, they were just, it was too much work to get too attached to them. I remember in the wintertime especially, they were living beings, so you had to get out there no matter what the weather was and give them water or they would die. So I remember those pig troughs being half full of frozen water, and you just put the hose in there and give them some water that they could drink. But
Raising pigs, did you ever see the movie Babe?
yes. Yeah, good one.
That brought back a few memories, I suppose.
Yeah.
Did you have some other chores around the house that you had to do?
Let's see. Well, I don't remember when I was smaller. Not a whole. I don't remember a whole lot. I was the oldest, so, and I had a younger brother, Shannon, 3 years younger, and Mark was 5 years younger, and my little sister was 9 years younger. So I was, Mom's. I liked helping my mom. I knew she had a lot to do, so I'd help with cleaning and stuff. And my brothers did almost nothing around the house. To get him to clean up the room was a major feat, but that was just how it was. But I remember even I was 9 when my sister was born, so I helped a lot with her, help watch after her and carry her around and stuff, and that was kind of neat.
Did you, I'm trying to think of the timing, did you go to school in West Union or?
Always went in Marshall. Mm-hmm. Well, by the time I was growing up, they had just closed down that West Union grade school, and either went to Hudsonville if you were a little farther south, or we were just far enough north that we went to Marshall. Now, when I was about 9 or so, well, when Sherry was born, that year, my mom and dad built a house. We had lived, the old farmhouse that we lived in at that point was, well over 100 years old. And then, but about a fourth of a mile away, or not even that, just a couple 100 yards or so, they built a bi-level home. And I remember watching my little sister when mom and dad would be over working on the house. And I remember one time I just couldn't get her to stop crying, and I carried her from the old house to the new house and gave her to them and said she just won't stop crying. But
Mom had a soothing influence on her.
Well, she could take care of it. Yeah, she probably just wanted mom and dad. But so that house was, they still live in it, all these years, 45 years later, but at that time it was built all electric. And now they've got a gas insert in their fireplace. The electric bills, especially with the rural electric, are just astronomical. So yeah.
Growing up in the country and coming into town, did you go to the South School? Or,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and in fact, and that was, now they had done the kindergarten first, and what's there now had already been built.
Okay, I wasn't sure when that was built.
Just with a lot less efficient windows and everything back then. But the old South School was still there, and I remembered we had music and art in the basement, and I definitely remember Fred Hayes being the art teacher, and music. Libby Wells was her name then. I think she was the music teacher when I was there. But I remember we were our fourth, fifth, sixth. Yeah, fourth and fifth were I don't remember actually which floor. I can remember it plain as day, but it was just an old schoolhouse. But I was in there for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Okay, that old school was rather a stately or a majestic building. I mean, with kind of a bell tower on top.
With the tall ceilings.
Yeah.
And actually, Mrs. Fraker, I can't remember her first name, but she was the 5th grade teacher. Gail Vargo was 4th grade, and she wasn't. She was probably just 40 or so then, and a newer teacher at that point. But I remember Mrs. Fraker was a really nice teacher. And then, Tingley. Oh my gosh, she's in the nursing home now. Mrs. Howard's mom.
Bernice?
No.
No.
Oh, that's awful. But anyway, Mrs. Tingley
Okay.
and Mr. Grubb was we actually switched classes for some reason during the day. The 6th graders, there was a hallway between the two, a cloakroom, and you just passed from one 6th grade class to the other. And then they had different classes that they would teach.
Do you remember anything about the interior of that old school?
Not really. The front of the room was just all blackboard, and then it had the old radiators, water, steam radiators, and wooden floor. So I don't remember too much.
It wasn't frosty cool in July then either, was it?
No, I can't even remember. And that's a good point. Now the buildings are all air conditioned, thank goodness. But back then, until 10 years ago, there weren't any air conditioners. So it was a lot less comfortable.
Do you remember things like, I guess recess, what all you did, and what the outside playground looked like?
Yeah. There were some big old trees there that aren't there now. In fact, I don't remember hardly any trees there now. But these were giant, 100-year-old trees. And I remember on one of them there was a basketball hoop, and some of the guys liked to play basketball at recess. And I just, tell you the truth, I just kind of hated that. So I just stayed in and just read or did book reports or something. And I really didn't enjoy competitive type sports. I liked track later on, but I didn't like the team sports.
Was there much playground equipment either? I don't think there was hardly anything more than some swings.
Yeah, just
slide maybe, teeter-totter or something.
Real basic, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the tennis courts that are there now weren't. They were over at the church, the Catholic church.
So do you have some, real vivid memories that were great memories at grade school?
I can't say that really. No, my memory's not that good anyway. I don't really have too many. I just enjoyed studying, and so got started, getting into schoolwork, and actually enjoyed it.
You would have ridden the bus then into town from.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We get on the bus at 7:15, which amazes me. Some of the kids here in Marshall get on at 7:15 and don't get at school till 7:45 or later. But yeah, every day we get up at 6:30, and when we lived in the older house, I'll never forget this. It had a big old pot stove or an old stove. I just remember that was where the only heat was, and we'd get our clothes on next to that stove, but we'd get up at 6:30 and get on the bus. Actually, it was 10 after 7. It was year after year after year. So, but I do remember that.
Let's see, would there have been food service at the school at that time, like for lunch, or did you bring your lunch?
Yeah, there was, but
Okay.
I've always been a picky eater, and my poor mother. It was only like 50 cents or quarter or 50 cents, but hardly ever. We'd have the menu, and there wasn't anything I'd eat. So it was for years. I wouldn't eat. Like today, I love peanut butter and jelly. Well, back then, I wouldn't eat peanut butter. I wouldn't even mix peanut butter and jelly. So she would make me butter and jelly sandwiches. Awful. Can't even, hard to think of it. And there weren't all the convenient things you'd put in for kids today. So, but I usually would take my lunch, and a lot of people did. And the lunch, what they offer today, I think is a lot better than back then. I'll never forget some of those things like spinach. I love fresh spinach, like in a salad today. But back then I remember it was a glob. They just pop a glob of cooked spinach. I mean, I bet there wasn't one kid out of 50 that ate that stuff. And beets was another one. Again, all we would do is mess with them with a straw, and it was fun just to, I don't know what we did with it. I remember poking them with a straw and having them go up the straw. But
Obviously, spinach was not your favorite food then.
well, and I probably wouldn't have eaten it, but I might have even tried, the fresh spinach, but that cooked stuff,
It gets,
oh my gosh, it's terrible.
I call it on the slimy side.
Oh, yeah. There's just certain things I do remember that.
From grade school and finishing it, then you went on up to that building, I guess, on 6th Street, the high school.
Yeah. Well, the junior high.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a lot different now. It didn't have all the big new gym or anything, and then the high school.
Was your junior high in part of the old high school at that time?
No. I don't know when the new junior high was built, but it had already been built. So,
Okay.
and just for the 7th and 8th grade, and then the high school, of course, has been all remodeled. I just can't believe how they carpeted the floors and put all this new lighting, and I mean, it's just so nice. And I mean, it's great because I think that it's a lot nicer atmosphere to be in. But I enjoyed school, and that was my thing. Again, the only sport I liked was track, but in the spring, and I didn't really do anything to get ready for track, but I liked running. When track season was here, I'd go out and run, and until my sophomore year, I did good. And between my sophomore and junior years, I discovered how to make milkshakes. So I would make chocolate almost every night for myself and my parents and whoever else was home that wanted one. I would make a milkshake. And so between my sophomore and junior years, I gained 10 pounds, and I never could run as fast after that. but I still like to run. But
Did you have the electric mixer to fix it with?
no, I just by hand, because I was I didn't want to have to clean that up, so I just did it by hand.
Was there a favorite subject you had in school?
I really enjoyed foreign language, Spanish. I took Latin all through there, and I learned a lot. I can't say I enjoyed it, but it was helpful. But Spanish, I really enjoyed. We didn't have German or anything else back then. Math, I enjoyed math up until trig. And at that point, it was like, I remember asking, Bob Morris was the teacher then, and I remember sitting there, and I said, and I got good grades all the way through, and so I didn't have a problem with that. That was working out, but in that class, I looked at him one day and I said, Mr. Morris, why are we doing this? I don't know. And he went back. He was reading. He had given us an assignment. He was reading. He loved to read Western books, so he went back to reading his Western book, and that was, he didn't know, I didn't know, and that was my last math class. I tried a little more at the college level because I had to, but it wasn't a pleasant sight. And then I enjoyed again. I enjoyed science all the way up through chemistry, and then my senior year I took physics. And I just, the first 2 weeks, I'd never dropped a class. I mean, I never got, I got 1B one time in PE. So I had good grades, but I sat there in this physics class the first 2 weeks, and all my classmates seemed to be catching on, and they were excited, and this is a neat experiment and all that. And I was like in the second row, and that whole 2 weeks, I'm like, you know what? Oh, I'm just not getting this. And finally, had never dropped the class in high school. And I told myself, I don't need this. I'm not going to be a scientist or anything. So I dropped the class and spent the rest of the semester in my only study hall, the whole high school, reading. I just read, novel after novel and enjoyed it. But
Was there a subject that you liked the least?
Oh, that one would definitely qualify. But I really enjoyed English, and that's come in real handy with the newspapers that we've had. And I really didn't enjoy PE. Probably, a little exercise is really good for me. Like I said, the only time I went out for sports was in the spring, so it forced all of us to do something the rest of the year. And I was in band, and it was okay, but I come to realize by my sophomore year, we had started out in, sixth grade or so I played the trumpet because my cousin did. I didn't know I didn't even know what the instruments all were. When we were supposed to pick out an instrument.
Oh, look good, huh?
But my cousin John played the trumpet, so I'll try that one. But I never, to be honest, I never could really tongue right correctly, so I could never really play. I could play a little bit, but I couldn't really play correctly. I was just there filling a seat. So that wasn't real pleasant.
Did you play in the marching band?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was in there, and but again, I never really could play the instrument correctly, and nobody ever really, you're just there, and you don't really have lessons or anything. You just past those early years.
Was Von Arne the instructor at that time?
No, Jane Dobson was there for a couple years, a real short teacher.
I couldn't recall what year Arne.
And then
hired.
Jim Gwynn. It was
Okay.
Jane Dobson, like the junior high level, and then
Okay.
Jim Gwynn was. But I was really pretty bad at the trumpet.
With, I guess you probably rode the bus too.
Yeah.
High school.
Yeah, until I could drive.
I was going to say somewhere there must have been a vehicle that come.
Yeah,
in
my sophomore year, and that was good because the first one was an Impala, a '72 Impala, and I was started driving about '76. That's when I turned 16, and that was great because Mom and Dad provided that one, and I didn't have to pay for it. And then I was going to the orthodontist in Terre Haute. I had braces for a couple years, and with Shan Smith, Ann's husband, and he was a couple years younger, so I was driving, and we were at the south exit out of Honey Creek Square, the stoplight down there, or I think there's a stoplight, and anyway, I pulled out, and I looked north and there was nobody coming. I looked south, and I waited on a car, and I didn't look back north. And there was this, and when I did, I was halfway across the 3 lanes, and there's this big old station wagon barreling ahead of all the other cars and smashed right into us. It was my fault, definitely, and it ruined both vehicles. And
There went the Chevy Impala.
oh yeah, that free ride on the car. So after that, I bought an old Chrysler for $1,100, and it had all the gadgets, the electric locks and everything, but it was just like a big tank, one of those old Chryslers. So that life was a little different after that.
But you wish you probably had either one of those cars today?
Well, that Impala would still wouldn't be bad to drive. Yeah.
Jolly.
Yeah, and I could probably sell the Chrysler.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So driving back and forth to school, what about right after school? You having a car and all, did that have some extracurricular activities?
Well, I was pretty. I was in a lot of activities, but I was pretty low key kid. We farmed, helped Dad farm. So in the fall and spring, it was like, if you weren't out for sports, which I was in the spring, but in the fall, you need to get home and help with that. And then I was in 4-H. That was a big part of life.
What about downtown Marshall and all? I'm sure you probably visited a place like maybe the Candy Kitchen and
Actually,
the other places around
you
town?
know, that was actually a little it had kind of faded
Faded
out
out?
by the time the mid 70s, or early 70s. I remember walking through it with my mom and dad, you know, just being in there. But by the time it wasn't going, I don't think, by 76, 78 at that point.
Do you have particular memories of downtown Marshall?
I remember the old library. It was a lot smaller and a lot. I remember the Western Auto Store, because when I was little, and I just really have one main memory about that. It's where the library is now, I think. And when I was little, I don't know, Mom and Dad made it clear that if I wanted a bicycle, I needed to earn my money for it. So Stingrays were a big deal then, and I remember I wanted a blue Stingray with a blue kind of metallic seat, and it was $33, and I saved $1 every dollar I could get. I mean, literally $1 on another one. So I had 33 ones, and I could go get that bicycle at Western Auto. So that's a memory there. Now I remember the two drugstores. Let's see, Martin's was actually where the newspaper office is,
Mhm.
and it was kind of sad when we bought the building. It had the remnants of Martin's drug above the door.
Okay.
And one of my helpers, we were painting it, and one of my helpers thought, "Oh, we need to scrape that off there." I'm like, you did what? But anyway, so I remember that. And now Blankenship's, I don't remember going in there as much, but I know it was a block over. I remember going to the bank, the First National, when it was on the east side of the square. And I don't really remember ever going in. That was where we banked, so I don't remember going into Landing where the Shore Murphy Insurance is. But so. Oh, and I do remember the doctor's office. Just a little bit on that one. Dr. Mitchell's office on the west side of the square, and I mean, maybe, I'm sure it was just because I was little, but those needles were big. And we didn't really, they were more in the bottom, is where I remember getting them there. I don't know if they were flu shots or what they were, but they weren't like today. Yeah, they were, and Clara, to me, she was scary. You know, she wasn't going to take any sass from anybody. And he often seemed like he had a cigar even then.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the treasure chest. You know, I guess if you could survive those shots, then they'd give you, well, and Sam Deal would have that at the dentist's office too, a treasure chest to make it worth your while.
Now, Clara had like a vice grip, but she got a hold of your arm. It was just like being in a clamp.
Yeah, you weren't going
and
anywhere.
Then you knew what was coming next.
Absolutely.
Or the other end, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, now that memory, but I don't remember much else around the square really.
You mentioned the house where you grew up and then your parents in the new house. What about neighbors? Are those pretty much
Gone.
gone, or are there any of the same families around in that
Well,
area?
Bubeck's, Willella Bubeck,
Okay, yeah.
still lives in a house down there, but outside of that, on our road, there were 2 other houses. They're both gone. Yeah, there really aren't too many. Rob Wells still lives close to where his family lived, but there's just a lot fewer houses now.
And I guess that's the thing, probably even in town, many of the buildings and houses are still there, but families and all are gone. Even this name's not as prevalent in many places. What year did you graduate from high school?
1978.
78. Was that a memorable year then?
Actually, it was. I was in such a hurry. I was always younger. Oftentimes I am now, but especially when I was younger, I was always in a hurry. Always had to do. Couldn't wait to get to the next step, do something else. So in January of my senior year, they let me graduate early.
Oh,
So I was able to start at Eastern and started in political science. I think that's what I took there. So I was there a year and a half, but I couldn't wait to go. Just have the challenge of it, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I stayed in I only stayed in a dorm one semester, Weller Halls in the Triad, kind of across from the Lance Gym. But and that was fun. I was the social chairman that first semester. I was never real quiet. I mean, some people think I am, but I mean, I'm pretty involved. When I do something, I like to get into it. So I was I'm sure I volunteered to be the social chairman, and we would have these beer parties in the basement of the place, and have music and like a disc jockey type thing, and I mean I never drank and never did and never have, but it was if we had a keg of beer there, then everyone would be happy and they would dance and have fun. So
wow.
So I mean that was and we probably had at least 3 or 4 of those parties, but it was right there in the dorm, and
They allowed you to have beer then in the dorm. Huh?
yeah, at least at that point they did. I'm not sure. They probably don't now, but it was at least a little more controlled than a lot of the things, and a lot of people that weren't in fraternities or sororities. I mean, it was kind of an option, or different option for them.
Place to socialize.
Socialize, and that was, I mean, like I said, I found that it got people loosened up a little bit, so they wouldn't mind dancing and talking and having fun, what we considered fun back then. And that was the disco era, so there was a place called E.O. Crackers where people could go and dance, and there was a mirror ball and all that. And I was even in a dance contest with somebody that semester, and I was awful. She was good, but I wasn't very creative, and we had to create different moves in this dance, and I wasn't very helpful, but we did it. We participated. But then after that, I ended up with my grandmother, Gertrude Strohm's help. I was able to get or buy an apartment house just like a block from campus, and it had a basement apartment where I stayed, and my cousin Matt Davidson stayed with me there for a year, and then I rented out the second and third floors. So, and in that time, it gave me experience on fixing up a place. I think I spent like $5,000 on paint and all the supplies to repainted the whole outside.
Were you renting 2 students?
2 students.
Okay.
Had 4 on the first floor, and they paid me $400 a month, and 3 on the second floor. They paid like $330 or something. So it was a good money maker, but and it wasn't anything bad about that one. And we ended up getting another one on a contract, that kind of no money down type thing, or little money down, a little house on 16th Street, I think it was. And Matt went in with me on that one, and we made it a little bit, but fortunately somebody else wanted it and we made a few dollars and got out of that quick, because it was one of those you just buy and tear down. Actually, it was that bad.
Little renovation required.
Yeah.
So did you have any problems with when students move out of being a disaster to take care of?
Actually, no.
That can be.
It was pretty. It was pretty basic, and there's always the demand there, so it was always going to rent. And we ended up, another friend and I bought another one like a year or 2 later. Same type thing. I remember we put a new roof on that one, and it was pretty good. And they tore it down to build a big 2 or 3 story giant thing with under first level parking and everything. So
the school bought it there?
No, some private group.
What did you major in at Eastern?
Well, political science. And so I had been interested in politics. So when I was a teenager, actually Bill Savage was the Republican chairman, and Dad knew him, and so he introduced me when I was 16. And I remember being at the KZ Shrine shrine 4th of July, and I just was amazed. People could actually get into that. Well, yeah, if you like this kind of thing, sure. So we ended up starting that was when President Ford was running that year against against Ronald Reagan first, and anyway, so we got helped out with that and got a teenage Republican club going, and just ended up going to meetings and things and meeting some of the candidates, and so that got me started. So when I went to Eastern, then Jim Edgar had been just elected. Let's see, like the term before, like 76. So he'd been in as a state rep 2 years, and when that summer, actually for a few months, like April till August or so of 78, I was actually a field coordinator for Governor Jim Thompson. Yeah. And at one point, downstate wasn't a very big priority. So, and there's not much population down here, and they knew that. So at one point, I had 49 counties that I was coordinating, and I was 18. I mean, just, I was just that stupid, looking back, to say, oh, Gary, you can do this. Oh, yeah, sure. I can do it. There's nothing I can't do. Oh, wow. And I wasn't bashful. I mean, I'd call those county Republican chairmen that were, here I'm 18, and some of them were 68 or 70, at that point even. But tell them what was needed, and we'd get different things going. So, but what happened was, they got to the point, they divided the region. They finally decided, after about 3 months of that, they decided, well, maybe we need 2 people, someone else to take half of that. And that was fine. I went to a couple of things for the Teenage Republicans, a couple of their events, not that they had many things going on, and at the state convention that July, I remember them saying, my boss with the Thompson campaign, ended up saying, okay, Gary, it's either Teenage Republicans or Thompson. Well, okay, I guess I'm done here, because I wasn't going to, turn my back on the Teenage Republicans, because that's where I came from. Not that I was doing anything for them anyway. So, but they used that. I mean, even then, they had used that. They knew what I would say. They wanted to give my campaign job to somebody else. And so that's why they put it to me like that, yeah.
Politics.
Well, it was somebody's girlfriend or something that, so they moved her into that job. But anyway, that was good for me, because then I could just focus on Eastern again and keep in school. So right after that, Jim Edgar was state representative, came to my apartment and said, or he said he wanted to meet with me. And said, well, sure, of course. So he stopped over. He said, I really need somebody to, run errands and, help me and drive me to campaign. He was running in 78, so he was running, like that was July, and it was that election year. And said, well, sure, yeah, so I could still go to Eastern and help him, and, it'd be nice to make some extra money. And so it was $200 a month. And it was 1978, at least, it helped out. But the poor guy, sad thing was, and I'm definitely, I'd do anything he wanted. He wanted, that he needed help on. So he wanted us to make signs. A lady named Jackie Eckert, who got elected to the school board at 18, like just 2 years or about that time, or right before that. Anyway, she was helping him, and he said, can you guys make my signs, like wooden signs to go, in the yards? And back then they didn't. They made them, more like out of wood. They didn't have all this, these cheap, this plastic kind of sign they do now that's real cheap. So I said, sure, we'll do that. Well, we did it, but we didn't know how to do it. So we made this silk screen, that Jim Edgar, state representative or state rep, and it was a dark blue sign, navy blue sign with white lettering. Okay, this silk screen, you should lay the silk screen on it, and you, you kind of squeegee the white paint on it. Well, it looked great. Or they looked great. I think we made 10 or 15 of them. and then we stuck them out in locations, and then it rained. And oh my gosh, he calls up, "What are you guys doing to me?" I'm sorry. We went and got him, and we figured out how to do it. So, but that first round, that was really embarrassing. But I helped then, and then he wanted, was always going somewhere to talk or to a fair or something. So, and his idea was for me to drive, and he could make notes or take a nap or whatever. But I remember he had a big, like a Ford Torino or something, a brown LTD or something like that. And it turned out that I had gotten hit. I was driving my big old Chrysler south of Marshall the end of my senior year, or just earlier that year. And on the Grand Turn Road, I was actually hit by a Corvette. And I only know that because a piece of fiberglass was stuck on the car. And it didn't, my car was such a tank that I was able to straighten up and keep going. I mean, I was like in shock, but it kind of wiped the end of my car. And it always looked, I never got it fixed, so it always looked bad from then on. So I was paranoid of cars, being too close to the middle. So when I drove, he would be in this big Ford that we were driving. He would be like hanging. If he was on the right on the passenger side, he would be like hanging. He could be hanging over the edge of the road, the outer edge of the road. So he finally just gave up. Said, "Let me drive. I'll drive." But anyway, so that was quite an experience. And of course, he won, but it was a crazy year because he was a real go-getter, and a fellow named Chuck Campbell was the other. At that time, people have no idea about this bullet voting. People could vote in the same election. There were 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans running most of the time, and 3 of them would get elected. So you could vote. You could give all your votes. If you voted just for one, they would get 3 votes. And then if you could vote for 1 vote for each of 3 people, or you could just vote for 2 people, and each of them would get 1.5 votes. I mean, the craziest system ever created. So that year, I mean, he was just a go-getter and doing all this, introducing legislation and everything. So people were so afraid that Chuck Campbell from Danville and Charleston, Mattoon, and Marshall and Paris were all in the same district then. And they were so afraid that Representative Campbell would get beaten that a lot of them, gave their votes to him to try to offset. And Edgar ended up being like the 3rd guy on the low. He made it in, but it wasn't just barely, yeah. But you never know. It was such a psychological thing back then with that bullet voting. Fortunately, it didn't last much longer.
And he was a good governor for Illinois, too.
Yeah, he was. Many people would say the last good governor we had.
I think so.
Yeah.
And he didn't end up in prison either.
No.
What year did you finally graduate then from?
Well, actually, he was picked by Governor Thompson to be the legislative director, or his legislative director, in it was like May of 79. So he was re-elected in 78, November, and then the following May or so, Governor Thompson asked him to take care. I'm the legislative director. You manage all the bills and try to get them all passed through the legislature. So it was kind of a big step up, but he had to leave the legislature. So for a couple months, when I was still at Eastern, so a couple months I was helping Babe Woodyard, who was our state representative, Edgar's replacement, and we had a little office in Mattoon that I would go over and work out of, answering constituent requests and things like that. And anyway, but he said, if you'd like to come to Springfield, I'll put you to work, in the governor's staff, as a gopher basically there, and you could finish at Sangamon State, which is now U of I Springfield. Yeah. I'd always had wanted to go to the U of I, but I had applied in finance, and that was full, midway through my senior years, so that's why I went to Eastern. So you never know what God's got in mind, what plan. So I ended up going over after that semester, and working that summer as I don't know if it was kind of like an internship that summer. I remember just watching the legislature and making copies and running errands and whatever needed to be done. But that was really interesting. In fact, that was a bizarre year. That was when the Equal Rights Amendment was all that was happening. And I will never forget when they threw blood on pig's blood or something on the floor of the Capitol, and they chained themselves to the entrance ways to the House or Senate chambers, and it was really, really awful. And they had protests and all that kind of stuff.
So that was 79, 80?
79, yeah.
Okay.
And into 80 probably.
Yeah.
So I moved to Springfield, and naturally I thought, well, I had such good experience money-wise, investment-wise, I'll just go ahead and try to buy on contract, of course, some rentals in Springfield. So I ended up getting 3 buildings there, and they were terrible. I mean, really awful. They were in 2 of them were in a worse part, a pretty bad part of town. But again, little or no money down type things, and one was in a better part of town, but it was just awful. It had like 5 or 6 little weird apartments, 1 or 2 room apartments, but I was able to. So by the end of 1980, I was able to finish my bachelor's degree, but I had switched it to economics when I went to Sangamon State, and that was I thought a little more helpful than political science. I figured I was getting plenty of political science stuff from day to day.
Did you, in this transfer then, did you sell your property in Charleston?
No, I kept those somehow. I'm not even sure how that worked. I mean, I had people. Well, actually, I had a friend watch over them and try, keep them. I mean, once they were rented, there wasn't much to do, all year with them. And he's the one that we bought the house and redid the roof on that one, and we'd already sold that little one I was telling you about. But in Springfield, it was. I mean, in those buildings, I really got to see how some people live.
Scary.
It was really scary. I remember one lady, she didn't have hardly any furniture. It was just her and this little girl. Her daughter was probably 1 and 2 maybe, and she had a cast and something like between her legs. I can't remember what was wrong with her, but it was a bad situation. And then I don't know, just different cases. People had alcohol problems, and people were lazier than dirt and didn't pay their rent, and it would get worse and worse. And when I was buying them on a real slim margin anyway, and they didn't pay their rent, and I couldn't pay my bills. And this one family, I'll never forget this. They were, mental illness and alcoholism both, and a couple, and they had 2 little kids.
Bad combination.
Yeah, that one was really bad. But anyway, so then, but I kept working. I was a gopher, and I couldn't wait to do something else, and I was so anxious to get started. I remember, God really does a lot of things. At one point, I was so anxious. I didn't have my degree yet, but I had some friends that worked for House Speaker George Ryan. And then he, became lieutenant governor. So I was like, I remember trying to get a job, and I couldn't just wait. I couldn't just take my time, and just, I didn't know what was going to happen with Jim Edgar and his career, and I just wanted to do more than just be a gopher. And it was such a learning experience. I got to all these big, real intelligent, professional people in the governor's office. Just looking back, I just calmed down and just listen to him more. More than I did. But I remember applying for a job. Well, you don't have your bachelor's degree yet. This was George Ryan. Thank the Lord that didn't happen. I could have been in jail. I mean, honestly, I mean, I would have been, one of his political hacks, which, doing
Yeah.
God knows what. And I mean, the guy's, well, anyway, several people went. It wasn't just George Ryan that went to jail, but anyway, but I got that degree, and then at the end of 1980, Alan Dixon, who was U.S. Senator then, actually, well, let's see, he was Secretary of State, and he resigned to be. He had run in the 80 election, and he was elected U.S. Senator. So Governor Thompson was able to appoint somebody to take his job, so he appointed Jim Edgar to be Secretary of State. I mean, the guy was only, at that point, was like 32. I mean, really young, but I mean, real level-headed and all that, but really young. So I remember him going to his house one night in Springfield. He asked, I mean, his whole staff, I mean, outside of the governor's office, I mean, he had several people working for him, but he had, before he was on the governor's staff, he had actually had a secretary in Springfield and one in Mattoon and me. I was the gopher. So, and at that point, it was just pretty much, or we were kind of the Edgar loyalist. I mean, everybody else was loyal to Governor Thompson, but we were the Edgar people. They were, or as far as staff went. So, and her name was Penny Clifford, by the way. So Penny and I, he said, "Can you guys come over? I want to tell you something." Like, well, of course, your boss calls, yeah, sure. And he says, have a seat. The governor's going to appoint me Secretary of State tomorrow, or I think it was tomorrow or the next day. Oh, okay, wow, that's kind of a big deal. And so, he basically offered us jobs, to work for him, and again, I was just a glorified gopher, really. I mean, I at least I had my economics degree, but and Penny was going to be his secretary. I was going to be like in a scheduling person, just to kind of schedule his events out and stuff. So we got started, and it was fascinating. That was early 1981 when the hostages were still in Iran. And it was, to kind of set when that was.
So you had graduated in 1980?
80, yeah, December of 80. I got that under my belt, and I'd been in a hurry for that. The only class I really remember was Shakespeare, so that was kind of interesting. And in a class called Industrial Organization, and the guy just told how big companies were running the world, basically. And I was very cynical. At that point, I'd been in, grown up Catholic, and always went to church and everything, and that kind of all fell apart, like it does for a lot of people in their college years. And this guy really blasted all of my core beliefs, and it took years to recover from that one. But you always hear about liberal college professors, and he was probably the biggest one for me. Nice guy, but it just,
What was Governor Ryan's first name?
George.
George, okay.
Yeah. So.
I had an association with him also, but that's another story.
Sure.
So your political involvements then were pretty extensive.
Yeah, at a young age, which I don't recommend for anyone, but it just was what it was, that kind of thing.
So these things obviously have had a big influence though on your thought process and your direction. Did you stay on then living in Springfield? Yeah.
In fact, I kept working in the governor's office, or the Secretary of State's office, and learned quite a bit. Had some health issues, and at that, I was diagnosed as bipolar. So I don't know if a lot of people aren't real aware of what happens when that happens, but I remember in 1982, in May of, or maybe it was 82, it was when the election campaign was full swing. Or earlier, even that spring. But anyway, I had a real problem with depression for several months, and didn't really have a clue what that was. I just knew I just didn't want to be here. I mean, I didn't want to be anywhere.
That's scary.
It is, and it's not people, people that don't really realize, a lot of people don't realize what it is. I mean, if it's not like you just are having a sad day or you feel sad or you just, I remember it was actually on a certain day, I'm pretty sure it was 82, but it was May 15th, I think of 82. I mean, for starting that day, everything was terrible. I mean, it was like a cloud came over my mind, and for months, it was just all I could do just to function. I lost 30 pounds. I remember wearing clothes or pants that I worn in 8th grade, and unfortunately, people don't know what's going on with you a lot of times. I remember the governor or Secretary of State Edgar at that time said, "Oh, you're really losing a bunch of weight," I mean, it's nice to stay trim, but when you're a man, losing 30 pounds at age 22 isn't really healthy. So it ended up, it got to the point where I wasn't able to work really. I ended up actually going into the manic phase, or I did keep working, but I ended up going into the manic phase where your mind just races with you and just creates things that only, you think things are happening that don't. I was going to buy a motel in Springfield, which wasn't too far out of the realm of possibility, but then before they built Union Station in St. Louis, it was just a wreck. I mean, it was just, now it's it's gone downhill, but it's a nice shopping mall now. Yeah. And a hotel next to it, but it was just literally a disaster. I mean, it just decayed and after it wasn't used as a train station. Before that, they remodeled it into a hotel and everything. So before that happened, I just knew that I was going to just do great. So I thought I was going to buy the hotel next to it, which at that point was a gay hangout. There's stories, I could tell you a lot more stories, but anyway, so that didn't work, but Jim Edgar's a very loyal person. Even I was, after I was diagnosed, I was in the hospital. This was early '83, and got on lithium, which I've been on for 33 years, and fortunately it works fine. But I was able to keep working for him, and just different things. And then the next year, I actually was able to take 3 months off and leave of absence, and went to Europe for 3 months. And that was probably a highlight of my life, really, just to be able to travel around and see all these things.
What part of Europe did you visit?
Oh gosh, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Greece. Went to the island of Santorini, just an amazing place, and then back up through Austria into Germany. Met several German friends that, I haven't stayed in contact, but there's one particular in Germany that I'll probably look up on Facebook sometime. I know he's a dentist now, so, but Germany, and then back toward London. But and then at one point I got in Italy. Pickpockets are real bad in Italy, and they stole my pass to cross over on the hovercraft back to London, and the officials there. I don't know how I begged. Somehow I got them to let me cross because I didn't have it, and I didn't have enough money to cover everything. Because my plane ticket was a certain day to head back, and so. But fortunately, like I said, they let me do that.
All those places you visited, what was the most memorable, or maybe your favorite place?
Oh gosh, really so many. Rome is just amazing. To be able to be near the Colosseum. It was a horrible place, but just amazing. And just being able to walk along what was the Appian Way, and just all those old stones, and to think that the people were there 2,000 years ago walking along there. Now, of course, the black sand beach in Santorini was amazing, and you could rent little mini bikes, and I remember I think I did that, and just just so interesting.
You've toured Europe now.
Yeah.
Something must have brought you back to the United States.
Money, yeah, yeah. It was and I was so homesick by then. I would send a cassette tape. I would record a tape and mail it back to mom and dad, and I it was terrible. The last one I sent, I think I cried half of the tape. It was awful, but family. So I came back and worked in Springfield for a couple more years, and then I got into a political argument type of thing where they were going to take the people used to run in the political parties for the Republican side anyway. You would vote for your state central committeeman in each congressional district. You would elect a person, and that board of all those 20 or 24 people, now it's only like 18, but they would run the Republican Party in the state. Well, Governor Thompson didn't like some of those people, so he thought, well, we'll just take that off. We won't let people vote for that anymore. I'll just appoint them all. So a friend and I was probably the worst instigator, but we thought we came up with something called the right to vote, and in other words, the right to keep voting for that those people, and of course Governor Thompson thought that was terrible, and Jim Edgar being his appointee, this was 86. It was already pretty obvious that he was going to be the next governor candidate, Republican, to follow Thompson. So he didn't want to make any waves. Well, Babe Woodyard agreed with me. He was our state senator at that time, and even though I was working in the Secretary of State's office, I started making some speeches, and we got some petitions out. And I'm not a very good organizer, so it was going to take like 500,000 signatures, or at least 400,000. We got like 10,000. But for 6 months or so, I'd go and talk to Republican central committees and tell them, you should have the right to vote for these people, and of course, Jim Edgar was saying, no, don't do that, and I wasn't loyal, and I admit, and looking back, it was not a good thing that I did. So by July, it was exciting though. By the state convention in July, they actually had a vote on this. Every one of the 180 counties, wards, 102 counties, and then in Cook County, the 50 Chicago wards and 30 townships, all had to cast a vote on whether or not they were going to allow this, on this, electing these people or not. And so they actually, 49 of the counties, wards, and townships voted not to do it. But you had the governor's political patronage job guy named Greg Bays, right almost next to the speaker's microphone, telling them all, as they went up there, you're gonna vote, you're gonna vote this way, or you're gonna have trouble. But 49 of them still did vote against the governor. So and we all got repercussions from that. But it was exciting. And I remember talking to Jim Edgar that day, and he's just like rolling his eyes, just do what you got to do. But he wasn't happy, because they had tried real hard to get us to back down and forget this whole idea, and of course, so it was 2/3 vote out of those 40. 2/3 of the votes went for the governor, and a third went against him. And he didn't have very many times in his 14 years that people tried to do anything to stand up to him. So anyway, then after that, one of the head guys at the Secretary of State driver's facility where I was working out of at that point, he said, well, the governor's, I need to punish you for this. And, which is true, I was disloyal. I said, don't worry about it, I quit. So I quit my job.
Adios.
Okay. what am I going to do? You know, I didn't think about that part. You know, I just thought, well, you know, I'm just, you know, young and stupid, 26. So I ended up getting into the food business, snack items in the grocery stores.
You mean delivering them and
Yeah.
or selling them? Or?
Selling, delivering, and all that for a couple years, actually for about 4 years. I mean, I had to make some money somehow. But I actually started with the food with a product called Nutella. It was a chocolate spread from Europe, and I was just sold in. I said, you know, I'm usually like 20 or oftentimes 20 or 30 years ahead on something. And in this case, as we've seen in the last couple of years with the commercials on TV, you know, it's all come around. But at that time, this was like 30 years ago, and it was, you know, no one was. They had Ferrero made the little Rocher candies, and they made Nutella, and they had it in little specialty shops, but no grocery stores or anything. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna be a distributor. I'm gonna find out how to distribute this stuff and sell it in stores, and I'd give out samples and put it on pretzels and bananas and dip it in strawberries and all that stuff. Of course, and it did. So I about starved. Lived with mom and dad. About starved for that year.
You were back in Marshall.
And yeah, I was back in Marshall, and I actually, but I got, well, or back and forth. That's confusing, but anyway, I would go with that for about a year, and then I added other snack items. A company called Weymouth Farms out of Minnesota had all kinds of snack things, a lot of bulk foods and 1 pound bags in the produce departments and things. So I would work with the super value stores, IGAs, and all through Illinois and Indiana. And Yoder popcorn from the Amish area up north, and so I did that for about 4 years, and I'd still be in political stuff a little bit, but I wasn't being paid. I just did it on my own, and then ended up back in with that. I ended up being back. Well, I guess I was only home for like a year or two, and then I got 28 or so. I was living in Springfield, and ended up. I had a girlfriend, and we had a daughter, and my oldest daughter Serena was born in 1988, and that we were together for like a year and a half after that, and it doesn't work so well. Living together is not a good thing to do, and we ended up arguing so much, and I moved out, and she moved back to her home area of DuPage County, and when Serena was just about 2, but I established my connection in court, and as far as being able to see her, and so I would go up there to and actually bring her back down to Springfield or to Marshall actually. And then let's see. But with that food business, so I was connected to Springfield still quite a bit, and in the summer of 1991, I had met, or through this chocolate adventure, I'd actually had a booth at the Ethnic Village and was giving out samples and selling jars of Nutella for 1 or 2 years of that, and I'd met the people in the Vietnamese booth. So in 1991, in that summer, I'd given up the chocolate idea but was helping them. They needed help, and I needed money, so I helped them. But I had met the lady that ran the Filipino booth. Her name was Feli Hipke. So Feli introduced me to a friend of hers that was working as a secretary in Springfield, and just on a working contract, and wasn't a U.S. citizen. But well, you know, we kind of, when I first met her, she just was real pale looking, and I thought, well, oh, that's nice. But it was interesting that as the days went by, Feli would send her over with this noodle dish that I really liked. Oh gosh, can't think what it is now. But anyway, she knew that I really liked these Filipino noodles. So here comes Melody over with these noodles. She made me bring these to you. And then so we got talking, and then we got walking around. Our first sort of date was I bought us a snow cone for a quarter. and I'm pretty sure we shared it, but anyway, later that week we danced a little in the Twilight Ballroom. I'm sure I smelled like meat, chopping up the meat for the ethnic village, and by late that week, this is all from like Saturday to Saturday. Late that week, on Saturday, it was going to be my mom's 50th birthday at the Colonial Kitchen in Marshall. So couldn't miss that, and I said, "Well, would you like to come with me?" And she's like, "Oh, I guess." She didn't have anything better to do, so she came down for that, and I remember we practically the place later burned down, but that night we practically burned it down with 50 lighted candles all at once. But that night even I asked her to marry me, and she just laughed. I'd already told her I'd been engaged like 4 times, and that nothing had worked out, and she wasn't taking that too seriously. But then on Sunday we headed back to Springfield, and we stopped at a gas station at Sullivan, and I'm pretty cheap, especially then when I was really poor. But they had these white roses on the counter for $1.99. Oh, I'll splurge. I'll get her one, because I really thought I loved her and all that. And so I gave her this white single rose when I got back from paying for the gas, and she started crying. I'm like, oh no, here I just spent $2. Was it a waste of money? So and then when she calmed down a little bit, she explained that she had told God that for him, she was real doubtful. She'd been married before, and her husband cheated on her and all that, and she had told him that, I don't know, who my husband's supposed to be, but you know who it is, God, and I want you to have them give me a single white rose. Yeah.
Wow.
So
that clinched the deal right there.
That kind of sealed it. 7 weeks later to the day, we got married at Brick Church down by West Union, and we had just a real simple wedding, and had our reception was in the barn of Gene and Jackie Lindley's. They lived by the river then, that river house, and it was a lot of fun. We had music, and I remember my Aunt Olive Strohm. I was pushy, I guess. I don't know how I asked her. I think I asked her to make a pie, but she made 7, and my mom made a red velvet cake, and I said, we all, Melody and I both like that a lot, so I said, just make a red velvet cake, and that'd be great. And other people brought things, and it was pretty basic. I think the whole wedding and reception was like $1,000, so we did good. And then we lived in Rochester at that time, or we got a little house in Rochester, rented it for a year, and then but after Adrian was born in Springfield, right after that, I'm like, wait a minute, I can deliver these food products. I can work out of Marshall just as easy as I can be out of Rochester, and close to Grandpa and Grandma. So we moved down. Actually, the first house was the guard house. Joan Shover owned it. It's a greenhouse on the Ernst Road.
Okay.
And we lived there for a year, and then moved into a house down where Hubert Collier had down, that doesn't even exist, by the river, down south of West Union for a year, and then moved to Marshall. The 2 newspapers here had the Choice was once a week, and then the Independent was twice a week, and then an outside company had bought both of those and was trying to make something 3 times a week, Independent Choice. And we thought we had started a little newspaper, because I had the idea in 1993, had the idea that, well, if we're going to live here, why don't we have like a newsletter or news, and Joe and Pat McCammon said, well, why don't you make a little newspaper? So for that area, I thought, well, at least it'd be nice for people to at least know what's going on, even in the West Union area, small as it is, and not just things they're making up at the restaurant, but what's really happening. So we did little 4-page tabloid paper we had for a few months, once a month, and we came out with that, the West Union Shopper Gazette, and then the next year, Martinsville had lost its newspaper, the Planet. Just a few years before that. So we thought, well, if we can do this in West Union, we can do it in Martinsville too. So we started the I can't remember what we called the Gazette. I think it was Martinsville Gazette. But anyway, so so they were both monthly then, and then we thought, well, if we switch these, if we came out like weekly, I could stop selling those food products, and we'd just work on newspapers. So we did that in 1994, sometime in '94. We started coming out with both of them once a week, and I don't know if we made any money, but we hobbled along anyway. And then in 1996 is when those papers got combined up in Marshall. So we decided, well, we can do a better job than that, we thought. So in November of '96 is when we started the Marshall Advocate, and it started out as a tabloid too, and it even had the TV guides in it, and that took up half of the paper, and then it just evolved and eventually we got it to come out twice a week.
Now you have a paper in Casey?
Yeah, we started a one about 7 years ago, and we called it the News Sun. We kind of did a little poll of readers or a poll of people. I can't remember how we did it. We had a shopper over there, I think, first. But anyway, we asked people, and some of them liked the KZ News, and some liked the KZ News or the KZ Sun. So we just called it the News Sun. So, and it went out. Well, actually, we charged for a year or two, and we had a shopper and that, and then last year, the owners of the Reporter were interested in selling. Okay. So we thought, well, we could just write it out, but it would be like 10 years, if we kept doing, let them do their thing. Like they'd also had the Marshall paper, and it had gotten to the point where when they finally stopped it, it had like 200 subscribers. So, but I told Melody, I said, this is reasonable. We'll just go ahead and merge with that one, and go ahead and buy it. So now it's the KZ Westfield Reporter. And then a year before that, though, we had started the West Vigo Times. And the West Terre Haute area, people don't realize, West Terre Haute's only like 2,000 people, but the area has about 9,000 or 10,000 people, and it all goes into West Terre Haute. There are 3 grade schools, and then the middle school and high school, and it's very similar to Marshall, actually. A little bigger, but their enrollment's probably, instead of our 430 here at Marshall, it's probably maybe 550 or so. Mm-hmm. But it's more of that hometown atmosphere. We haven't really been able to capitalize ad-wise like I really thought we would, but at least not yet.
I guess looking at it from the business standpoint, I can't maybe restaurant business might be as difficult, but publishing and the schedule and the time must be almost grueling. Well,
lots of good part-time help. I mean, we have people, somebody writes, over here, somebody writes there, somebody takes pictures. They all have little pieces, but it comes together. Yeah, it is a lot of work.
It has to be.
Melody is able to she probably works about half-time now. But I'm still at the time and a half level. But it's just, we feel like that's what God's leading us to do.
You've got a long term before retirement, so.
Well, I think so.
Gary, one thing I usually have sure enjoyed visiting with you, this is exactly what this whole project is for, is to put down so that someone in the future can say, gee, I didn't know that about Gary. But one question I usually ask about everyone when we wrap it up is, so if you went back to London and you said, I'm from Marshall, Illinois. Someone said, where on earth is that? Or what's that all about? What would you tell them about Marshall and why it might be a good place to visit?
Oh, gosh, just a wholesome place. I mean, good family place. We have, I mean, in London, I don't know what they would want to know, but you know, the idea that, I mean, it's just, I mean, we're 4,000 people. It's just you know, we care about one another. You know, the big cities, you know, you just don't get that. And here, you know, no matter what's going on, and I mean, we have our ups and downs, but you know, people generally care about their neighbors. They care about their homes. The school, obviously, you know, pride in our schools, in our teams, in our organizations and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
that's well said. And I certainly appreciate your time. You know,
Sure,
it's been,
you bet.
it's been great. And you filled in exactly what we're looking for as far as what's Gary's story. And I think in
More
the
than they
future,
want to hear,
people will be
probably.
interested to hear. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure.
And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this for us.